This lesson might just be one of the most important lessons of the course, because we're going to talk about something very, very important in JavaScript, which is the topic of objects. Now, what are objects? So far, we've looked into a couple of types of variables. For example, a number. You can use a number to represent a lot of things, like a score, or a coordinate number, or a weight, temperature. And we have also seen text, which can store, say, a number, a property, value, or anything that you want to put on it as save as text. But what if you want to represent something more complex? Example, think of a player of a game. A player of a game will have many different properties. The player will have a name, the player will have an amount of energy, a number of lives, maybe a position X and Y coordinates on the screen. It might have a color. So objects are a very flexible type of structure in JavaScript that are used all over the place, and they allow us to represent these flexible entities, these real world entities that you want to somehow work with in your code. Let me start by creating a new object. So I'm going to call this object player, and an empty object, there's two ways of creating one. One is using curly brackets like this. And if we show that on the console, you will see that it shows as an empty object. Another way of creating an object is by typing in new object and brackets like this. That's another way to initiate a new object. So I'm going to duplicate this line using Ctrl Shift and D, and I'm going to comment this out, and we'll define an object in this way because I want to assign in some properties. Let's give our player a name. That's the name of a property. Objects are basically a collection of properties. Each property has a label and a value. You give it whichever label you want. That's for human beings to read. So I want to call this property name, and the value of this property is going to be a string. It's going to be your name. Let's give the player also an energy of 100. Number of lives, 2, position in X, 10. These are some coordinates, some hypothetical coordinates. And let's say a color, blue. Now, you might be thinking, this is getting a bit hard to read. Well, yeah, it is. And you can put it this way as well. You can just put everything in a different line and make sure that you keep the commas, because that's how you separate the different properties. So we have now a player. Let's reload the page and show it in the console. So it shows me the player, and if I expand this, it shows me on detail each one of the properties of my object. How can we access these properties? We can easily do that. For example, if I want to show just the name of the player, I can either use the dot notation, which is typing in dot and then the name of the property that I've given it. So I've given it the name, so I'm just typing dot name. Let's reload the page. See how it shows me here your name. An equivalent way of doing this is using square brackets. Quotes could be either single or double quotes, and the name of the property you want to show. And by the way, I just noticed that we didn't put it like that. Let's reload, show it here, blue. So these are two equivalent ways of accessing a property. You can also modify properties. You can do player.name. It's going to be now some other name. And we can show the player again in the console. So as you can see now, the name is a different one on this new place where we're looking at the object. Of course, you can access the object directly in here, and you can access the properties if you want, and you can change them. Player.name, error, and then player again, and it shows the new name that I've modified. Cool. So you can also have objects inside other objects. You can have any type of property that you want, an unlimited type of property. And you can create new properties as you go. For example, I'm going to create player.color let's say, friend, and this could be another object that has another name. Say Pablo, I'm your friend. Let's make it simple. Reload the page, and then I'm gonna type in player again, and see that now player has this new property called friend, which is an object as well. I could add in new properties easily as I go. For example, player dot weapon sword, and then I can reload this, and I can type in player, and it'll show me that it has now expanded. It has a weapon. I can access it. Player dot weapon sword. So to summarize, objects are one of the most important concepts in JavaScript. You will see objects all over the place throughout this course, and if you use external JavaScript libraries, you'll see it everywhere because it is one of the main elements that you use. Objects have different properties, and you can easily access these properties by using either the dot notation or the square bracket notation. And you use those same two notations either to access a property, like when you just want to show it on the screen, and when you want to modify it too. So you use it in both cases. And remember that you can easily work with objects in the console by using console.log or just accessing the objects in here, and that you can add new properties as you go. These properties can either be new objects. There's no problem with doing that.